Financial argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Now, today was a completely crazy day on the market. We understand the people in the UK, they decided that they want out. They don't want to be run by a non-elected body, and they want their country back. Now, of course, people are screaming and yelling that the UK is completely free at this point. We need to remember one thing. This was a referendum. We still have many other stages to go through before the UK can break free. And we also have seen in Greece, the people voted for Cyprus, and the central banks got their teeth into that government, and that government did absolutely nothing for the people. But we can see the market today is reacting like it's all said and done, that the UK has left, everything's falling apart, the people are to blame. Gold has surged around $59 or so. The market has fallen by 500 points, and we've seen this all across the globe. And one thing we need to remember is that the central bankers, they are just not going to let the people do whatever they want. They want control. That is the end game, control of the population. So at this point, we do see the people, they're voicing their concerns. They're out there telling governments, the central bankers, we don't want this anymore. Now, the central bankers are going to attack. And this is something that we need to watch. And we will see this come up in the next couple of weeks, couple of days. But during this period of time, they're going to blame everything on the people. Look what you've done. You voted on this. Now the economies are failing. Everything's falling apart. It's because of what you have done. You need to stay with the central banking system. Well, we're ahead of the game. We've been following the economy, not just here in the United States, but globally, and we understand that this has been declining for a very long time. The economy is one big, complete illusion controlled by the central banking system. And we need to realize at this point that they're not going to just give away their system to a bunch of people who said, yes, we want to be free. Yes, there's a lot of talk about how the central bank is saying, yes, okay, we're going to follow the procedures and stuff, but we will see the true central bank show its teeth in the weeks ahead. Just look at Greece. It's an example. Did the people get what they really wanted? Or did the opposite happen? Well, the opposite did happen. But when we look at the economy here in the United States and around the world, we see many different things occurring at the same time. Everything has been falling apart for a very long time. The economy is held together with tape, spit, and glue. And no matter what the central banks say, the economy was never doing well. We see here in the United States, durable goods. Durable good orders, they have cratered by 2.2% in May. And what's very interesting about this is the 17th month in a row, year on year, that core durable goods have been declining. Now, something that has never happened without a U.S. economic recession is happening right now, where durable goods are continually declining for this period of time. Now, I'm going to say we're past this recession. We are in a deep depression at this point, because when we look at the economic indicators, we see we are worse off than we were back in 2008. Now, another great indicator is the Cass Freight Index. And the Cass Freight Index was established in 1995 and has been trusted as a measure of North American freight volumes and expenditures. Our monthly Cass Freight Index report provides valuable insight into freight trends as they relate to other economic and supply chain indicators and the overall economy. Now, data within the index includes all domestic freight modes and is derived from 25 billion in freight transactions processed by Cass annually on behalf of its client base of hundreds of large shippers. These companies represent a very broad sampling of industry different industries, including consumer packaging goods, food, automotive, chemical, OEM, retail, and heavy equipment. Now, the total amount of stuff that is being bought, which is being sold and shipped around the country by all these various methods, has now been declining for 15 months in a row. The brand new number that just came out for May is the lowest number that we've seen for the month of May in 6 years. And of course, the April number was the lowest number that we've seen for that month in 6 years too. And the number for March was also the lowest number that we've seen for that month in 6 years. And we're looking at this, and when we look at all the other economic indicators, they're all pointing to one thing, that the economy is collapsing. So now we have this Brexit, where the people have voted on this referendum saying, we don't want the EU. Now, during this whole period of time, I noticed the corporate media, they were trying to make it look like that people are voting to stay. And then eventually what happened is there were just too many votes and they couldn't really manipulate it in a way that they wanted to show that the people wanted to stay in the EU, and they couldn't do anything about it. And now the people have voted that they want to leave. Now, David Cameron, he decided to resign. Stock markets crashed. Gold surged up by quite a bit. And when we look at this, we can see that the central bankers right now, they are scrambling to keep this system alive long enough. Because what they're coming out with is that this is because of what the people just did. And statements of the G7 finance ministers and central bank governors, well, they went on to say that they respect the intention expressed today by the people of the United Kingdom to exit from the European Union. We are monitoring market developments following the outcome of the referendum on the UK's membership of the EU. We affirm our assessment that the UK economy and financial sector remain resilient and are confident that the UK authorities are well positioned to address the consequences of the referendum outcome. So they're already setting this up, saying there are going to be consequences. Now, we know that none of these countries need a private Western central bank system. Look at Iceland, for instance. We went through the same exact thing. They told us that it's going to be a disaster. They're never going to be able to make it, and their economy is doing well. They put their bankers in jail. They took control of their country. Actually, Putin did the same exact thing. Now, we look at this and we see that the central banks, they're all ready to provide liquidity. The Bank of England governor declared that the central bank can provide an extra £250 billion through its existing facilities to make sure that everything is okay. The Fed came out and said they're ready and willing to take this freely created currency out of thin air and provide it to anyone that needs it. But very interestingly, we are seeing other nations now. We're seeing Scotland saying maybe we should have a Scotland independence referendum once again. Italy's Northern League is saying they're going to launch an EU referendum campaign. And they're collecting signatures right now for the referendum. We also see France, Germany, Sweden, the Netherlands, Czech Republic, Hungary. These countries, they're looking to follow what the UK is doing right now. And we see, since this is happening, many countries and investors are now piling into the dollar. And what the Brexit means is that more passengers are going to be loading onto the US dollar, and we know what's going to happen to the dollar eventually. And this explains why the Fed has stepped up their swap lines. The Federal Reserve is preparing to provide dollar liquidity through its existing swap lines with central banks as necessary to address pressures in the global funding markets, which could have adverse implications for the U.S. economy. Now, when we look at what's going on with this Brexit, we see a lot of propaganda out there. We see the corporate media, the U.S. government, central banks are out there saying that this is going to be a disastrous scenario. Now, we know the economy of the world, it has been declining rapidly and it's continually declining rapidly. There's nothing that's going to stop this. Now, this gives the central bank ammunition to say, this is why the economy is failing right now. And we can see that the Brexit, this poses a problem with the TTIP. And according to the German Party Alternative for Germany, Alexander Guland, he's saying that the negotiations on the TTIP are likely to come to a complete standstill. French politician noted that the people said no not only to the current model of the EU, but also to the TTIP. So they're lumping all of this in, saying, okay, you know something? We're saying no to the EU, and along with this is the TTIP. And we know the IMF just came out to the US and saying, listen, you need to pass this. Remember, this is not for the people. The EU is not for the people. It's not an elected body. It's a body that elects the president themselves, takes away sovereignty from different countries. And we can see already out in the UK, there's types of soft capital controls. We've been seeing people, they've been lined up in front of foreign exchange services, banks. They were trying to exchange their pound sterling for anything else. We see the UK-based travel group, Thomas Cook, they suspended their online currency purchases and imposed a £1,000 limit on transactions at high street branches due to an unforeseen demand for euros. And this is a form of soft capital controls. Now, in the corporate media, they're pushing the idea that all of this is going to create a recession. There's a lot of recession talk, and they're really pushing this idea because of what just happened. The whole entire economy can come crumbling down. And of course they're going to do this. And we knew they were going to do this because yesterday we talked about, well, if they do vote to stay in the EU, that wasn't going to be a problem. That's the central bank's wish. But if they did decide to leave the EU, the central bank would then turn around and say, because the people of the UK decided to leave, the economy is starting to fail. And we're already seeing this happen right now. But we have to remember that this referendum is an advisory referendum. And Parliament, they are not bound to comply with this. So what has happened so far? The people have voted, and that's it. Nothing has changed, but the markets took a dive, gold surged, people are talking doom and gloom. They're still using the scare tactics to say you've made the wrong decision. No, the people made the right decision. They don't want to be governed by a body that is not elected by them. They don't want to be governed by a body that controls many different nations, and many of these nations are very different. Different languages, different cultures, but they're all trying to lump them in to the same category for a one world government, a one world currency. And guess what? It's not working. Now, when we look at this, the results of the referendum, they will not take effect and will not allow the UK to leave like in the next 4 years. Because to leave the EU, the UK also needs to undergo a number of procedures. In particular, it must inform the European Council about its intention to withdraw from the Union. The European Council will then decide on the principles on the basis of which the UK's withdrawal will be, and they'll have to discuss it. After, the European Commission will discuss the details of the agreement on withdrawal. And finally, the European Parliament and the majority of the EU member states will have to approve the deal. And we have to remember, the UK Parliament, they have to approve it. So we are far off from all this, but we can see already the central banks, they don't like this. They don't like when the people speak up and it's not in their favor. How dare you do this? And this is why you're going to see the central bank come down very, very hard on the people. Actually, they might even use this to say this was the cause of the crash. This is a black swan that came out of left field. They didn't expect this. They thought they had full control of what this vote was going to be. And they're going to use this in a way where they blame the people for their actions. Even Paul Craig Roberts is out there saying that the fight has just begun. The British government, they have a long fight ahead of them. And the British government can say, hey, listen, the EU, we spoke to them. They gave us a better deal. And now we can afford to stay. So we're not going to listen to what you said. And this is something that has happened before. Look at Greece. The people spoke up, they voted, and it didn't go in their favor. Everything was not done the way they wanted. Because guess what? Governments that are not working for the people, and especially the EU, which is not elected by the people, they're not going to do what the people want. They're going to do what the central banks want, what the elite want, what the governments want. So where does this leave us? This leaves us with the markets continually coming down. Most likely it will be a disaster on Monday. Gold is going to surge because people are going to be very nervous about this. Investors are going to be very nervous about this. And they're going to pour a lot of their currency into gold. We're going to see a lot of countries moving into the US dollar because now we have this catalyst. Other nations are looking to remove themselves from the EU. And at this point, the central bank is not going to let this happen. They're going to come out with teeth and claws, and they're going to make sure that every country, every person in the EU gets back in line. And if they don't, they're going to blame it all on them that the economy has collapsed. They'll bring it down. No doubt about it. Just to show that this is what happens when you don't abide by our control. They will bring down the economy and they will say, hey, look what happens when you don't do what we say. Now we know this is not true. We know the economy's been failing for a very long time. We know that the economy is held together from all the free currency that was created, the bond purchases, the corporate bond purchases, the QE1, QE2, QE3, QE4, and the QE that they're still doing, because they really haven't stopped. All the toxic mortgages that they purchased, all the derivatives, all the bubbles that they created. Again, the people are on the sidelines. This is their economy. This is their bubble. And no matter which way they move, they will blame it on others and not themselves. And they will push their agenda. Now, out in Turkey, Turkey does not want politicians to go to the Incirlik Air Base in southern Turkey. They want no outside politicians there whatsoever. Military, technical delegations, they can visit. This is very interesting. We also see out in Syria, the Syrian opposition, the moderate rebels, controlled by the United States government, central bankers. They are out there and they have accused Russia of using incendiary bombs in Syria. Now, of course, Russia is saying this is completely impossible. We are not using them. Please show us the proof. And once again, this is where it falls short. They don't have the proof. But of course, the moderate rebels have gone to the UN and they're complaining about this. Now, the question is that Russia, they like to dig deep and they like to say, show us the proof, show us where we're using them, show us how you found this out. And every time they push, guess what? The US, they have absolutely nothing. And most of the time, it turns out that the moderate rebels, the Islamic State, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, they've been using the chemical weapons, the incendiary devices, all types of weapons that they're not supposed to be using, that are banned internationally. Now, Russia, they want the UNSC to pressure Turkey to respect Syria's sovereignty. So they're going to the UN Security Council, and they want the UN to investigate reports of Turkish fortifications on Syrian territory. And we realize that Turkey they have invaded a sovereign country. Now, every time Russia brings this up, the U.S., the coalition forces, they continually veto this. Because, remember, their goal, still the same. It's to get Assad. Nothing has changed. We see Norway right now. They have approved, the parliament has approved it. They have the go-ahead, and they're sending 60 troops to Syria right now. So we're starting to see that all the coalition forces, that where Ashton Carter went to all the different countries to bring in troops into this area, it is happening. So we're seeing the UK, we're seeing Germany, we're seeing France, we're seeing the United States, we're seeing Italy, we're seeing many countries. They're bringing in more and more military assets, more troops into this area. Because eventually what they're going to do is they're going to go after Assad one way or another. Now, the Islamic State was out there, and they expressed their delight for the Brexit. Now, of course, we know this is complete propaganda. They're out there, and this is coming from Site Intelligence website. They've been broadcasting this. This is Rita Katz. We know this is a propaganda outlet. But what they're saying is that now, since Europe is in complete chaos, it is time to attack Europe, to bring down the rest of the economy. Now, this could be why there's a travel advisory throughout Europe. We can understand the warnings that were coming out, because they had this planned if the people should vote, hey, let's remove ourselves from the EU, which just happened. Even though it's not complete, nothing really happened except for the referendum. So we can see right now, this might have been already in the works just in case something like this happened. And we see at this point that everything that we've been looking at, all the economic indicators, all the geopolitical indicators, they're falling into place. So we're going to have to watch these situations very, very closely. We see things are heating up, the economy's coming down, and like I said, when you see gold start to move like this, this is an indicator that things are rapidly falling apart. And we can see right now that there's nothing to stop this economy from crashing. Yes, they can try to pump up the bubbles the best they possibly can, but most of the people are starting to realize that, hey, this entire global economy that's controlled by the private Western Central Bank, it is coming down. Now, if other countries decide, hey, let's have referendums, well, this is where the central bank is not going to just sit back idly and say, hey, no problem, we don't mind if there's no more EU. No. They're getting ready to put Plan X into motion. And most likely it will be to bring the economy down, to start war, and move their agenda ahead. The timeline now has been shortened. We can see they are on the move. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.